So in the late 1990s, I had settled into a career in farm management in South Africa at a time when South Africa was going through quite a socio-economic change, and there was lingering after effects of apartheid and other social issues. In the 2000s, we realized that we were pregnant with Carl. This started a whole conversation between Michelle and I regarding our future and careers and in locations, to the extent that I had started looking in an American fruit magazine called The Good Fruit Grower. Reading these magazines led me to the back of the magazine where there was a very small employment section. We decided to take out an advertisement in the magazine with the attempt to try and make contact with employers in the United States.
With the time difference of 7 hours, I can remember always going early in the morning to see whether anybody had written back to us.
All of a sudden I got a phone call from the HR manager here at the Bowman organization in Virginia. He called me up and he asked me if I was going to be home that weekend. He informed us that the owner of the company, Mr. Sonny Bowman, was going to fly to South Africa, and then he wanted to meet with us and basically interview us. So obviously this was very shocking, but we very quickly conceded that we'd be at home and we'd make a plan to be there, and so it unfolded. He met with us, and his whole perspective had been that he wanted to meet with both myself and Michelle in our home to get an idea of how we interacted with each other, where we lived. And I thought it was very dynamic for an owner of an orchard company to pay that amount of attention to those small details. It was very enlightening to have him come and spend that time with us. And I never forget, the conversation was very much the hypothetical, if we took this job and if you offered us this job. We finished the entrees, and I remember he pushed his plate aside and he said, okay, no more with the hypothetical. If you want this job, it's yours, but under the condition that you come and visit us in Virginia and see the company, get to know the people, see a little bit of the surrounding area. So I flew over and I spent a week here in Virginia, and of course I had a video camera that I borrowed that I was trying to video all of these things for Michelle, that she could see where it would be that we would move to. I think the biggest adjustment obviously was driving on the other side of the road. That was not difficult, but obviously quite an adjustment. I took video and I returned to South Africa, and I remember Michelle and I sat down a little while after I returned, and I was actually bordering on not accepting it, because being in America was quite different. The lifestyle was different, the food was different, many more ways it was different than I had expected it to be. So after further discussion, we made the final decision that we would take up the offer and move to America.
Then started the time of second-guessing ourselves. We could really not let anybody know that this is a decision that we had made until we got all the paperwork from the embassy, I guess. So it was a very unsure time, a very strange time. But then finally, we got notice that our visas had been issued. We gave notice to our employers and started planning, packing companies and how we were going to move here. So we had exactly 3 weeks between the time of picking up our visas to the time that Paul had to actually be in the United States for his job. So we scrambled around for 3 weeks, selling everything we had, getting movers to come and pack up our stuff that we wanted to take with us. Because of 9/11 and all the airports being closed, the freight rate had tremendously increased. So we got a phone call from the moving company to say, if you want the rate that we quoted you, we are coming tomorrow to pack what you want to take to America. So that was a very interesting scenario, because we hadn't even had time to think about what we wanted to take. So our process was that we just emptied out one room in the house, looked at certain things and thought, well, we should probably take this. And everything we thought we wanted to take, we put into that room, and everything that wasn't in that room didn't make it across the ocean. And then in October, we took Paul to the airport and waved him goodbye.
Yeah, and I flew over, but finally made it to Timberville, Virginia. And we were fortunate enough that they allow us to stay in a company home, which would give us time to settle in. Of course, it was an unfurnished home. and I knew that a few weeks later Carl and Michelle would be arriving. So in those first couple of weeks I would work all day and then go home. So in those first couple of weeks I spent my evenings and weekends preparing the house. So we moved in and began getting adjusted. Initially Michelle on her work permit wasn't going to be working. There were still some things that had to be finalized, and so she was at home initially with Carl. So, we settled into normal life. Our visa was 3 years. After those 3 years, we had the opportunity to renew it. And at that time, the Bowman Company had decided that the relationship was strong enough, and they asked us if they wanted them to pursue a green card application for us, which took 10 years in the end. When we finally got our green cards, we then had to wait another 5 years and multiple more applications before we could apply for citizenship. So in 2018, we became joint citizens of the United States of America and the Republic of South Africa, and are very fortunate to be in the US, which we regard now as our home. And so that's coming up on 19, almost 20 years that we've been living in the United States.